Data security and breaches are an increasing concern for Main Street businesses. In this exclusive interview, Thomas Katona of Apogee Insurance Group talks about the emerging opportunities for independent agents.
Yeah, data security has become a very hot topic in the last 3 or 4 years. Lots of legislation has been passed, and what's occurred is data security breaches now have become a Main Street type exposure. We see lots of companies with data security breaches, but it isn't a matter of, is it an exposure that might occur? It will occur. I think we find that 98% of the time, companies do have voids in their secure data information that will expose them with things like HIPAA information, with things like credit card information, things like people's home addresses, and any kind of proprietary information that could be classified as secure data could create a data security breach. That information, again, we're not talking about identity theft here, we're talking about the fiduciary responsibility of corporations to control who accesses that data and how that data is accessed. So it has become a very large problem in the United States at this point and around the world. It is obviously a worldwide entity, by the way, because people doing business on the internet, it's virtually impossible to secure all of that information. We find that there have been a lot of security breaches in the last 2 or 3 years. I think daily there are millions of hits on people's networks trying to gather information, to capture the information and sell that data. So companies do have a responsibility to cover themselves for these kind of data security breaches. Right now, the average claim that we see around the country is about $6.3 million for a typical data security breach. So it gets rather large. In that security breach, typically we're talking about $128, which is significant in terms of costs, and that's primarily in lost business and credibility of the corporation who had the security breach to, in fact, attract customers who have very little confidence now in how they handle that information or data. The challenge is most companies do not have a contingency plan in place. Primarily they'll have security or firewalls or anything to protect access to that information, but very few companies have plans in place that tell them what they'll do after the response in terms of the security breach. And again, I think that's where most companies fall down, by the way. The costs can go off the wall in terms of remediation costs for these kind of secure data claims. And without a contingency plan, quite often it's a very knee-jerk reaction in terms of how they deal with these claims, how they deal with notifications, how they stop the security breach, how they remedy how much data was breached or gotten access to. We find insurance agents and brokers obviously capture a lot of this information to write coverages for our insureds. We find that when we do seminars, for example, on data security and security breaches, that most agents will stand up and ask us lots of questions regarding their own environment. Graham Leach, for example, requires that you have certain security measures in place. And we deal with lots of agents and brokers, and obviously they don't have the wherewithal in a smaller agency to cover the costs of securing doors or having password-protected doors, obviously having key cards, things of that nature, fobs, to access the data. But most insurance agents and brokers are probably Graham Leach non-compliant at this point. Now, whether or not we've seen a lot of lawsuits there, I think that will occur in the next few years. So I think as a group of insurance agents and brokers, we've got a responsibility to protect that data. That is clearly where we're seeing a lot of insurance claims at this point, and I think it will ripple probably into some of the larger agents and brokerages